Hey, everybody, we're back. So we're thinking about what we're going to do today. And I'm trying to remember if we had anything. I don't think we had anything particular topic wise that we wanted to cover this time around. So is there something you got off the top of your head? Otherwise, I'll think of something off the top of my head real quick.
Not at the moment.
Okay. I think skins, because something I ran into this week, is the uh, basically it's a customer panic button. And what happened, I think I mentioned this, is I had a customer that it's like, hey, go take a look at the site. Been working on it for a while. It's essentially, it's not like not a full demo, but like hey, it's demoable enough. And it's one of those where it's like the primary guy that's got some technical knowledge. It's not like the CEO or something like that. It's somebody that you expect to have a little bit of, although not a developer, they have a little bit of understanding of software development. And he does. I mean, there's no question about that. But the first thing he did was he logged in and he went to do like one thing that was like, and it was broken. It was just like right off the bat. And it was one of those, it was because, I'm used to, it's got like 15 values you have to enter in. And if you enter one of these wrong, then it throws it into the, I'm not going to show it to you pile, basically, because we're in flight and there's some stuff there that it's basically saying, oh, that's legacy data. So we're not going to show you that right now. And so he goes and he creates this record. It doesn't show up on the list. He panics. He's like, oh my God, it doesn't work at all. And I guess in his defense, it didn't because he was blocked. It was like as soon as he did that, he can't move forward. And then he's also using some old data, and so it's panic ensues. And I think that's something that I've seen it often enough where it's like you put it out there, and somebody takes a look at it, and it's like, bam! First thing they do is they do something different that breaks it, and then it's just like, all right, doesn't work at all. Yeah, it's like it's a showstopper. And even if you know it works, you've run through it, but it's like it's a showstopper for them. So I think that's a handling those situations. And what do you do to first to call them and then to, essentially go into a little bit of firefighting mode to do a little triage to make sure that figure out what they're doing and get moving forward. Does that sound like a cool, or at least a topic for the first part?
Yeah, so we're going to focus more on completed code going out, running into issues, or proof of concepts going out with incorrect expectations causing the firefighter or both.
Um, this would be probably both, but it's really more the latter because it's really more. This is where it's like we haven't fully where there are issues. So this is like beta software kind of stuff. This is where there's some issues. There's a couple things going on. You're not expect it's not should not be expected to be 100%. And literally the customer's like, I know it's got bugs. I know you're still working through stuff. It's like, okay, so we're on the same page, but we're not on the same page. So it's dealing with those kinds of situations because I think if you're new to this, if you haven't handled it before, then like panic ensues on your side as well. Because then you're and I've been in those where it's like, shoot, that should work, and the next thing you know, your head's down trying to figure out how to fix that one bug. Particularly if it occurs like in a meeting or something, because then it's like, all right, now I'm totally focused on this bug, as opposed to maybe something better that you could be doing with that project or that application. So I'll set the table and then throw it to you and see what your thoughts are on it and how you would handle it. Because I think it'll be another one of those. I'll sort of be like, here's what happened. Here's my thoughts, or here's how I handle it. And then throw it to you for the follow up. Cool.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because if we think back to American Home Patient, that was Jeff. Anytime you say
Yeah.
your code is done, the first thing he would do is go break it.
Yeah. It's like I said, I've seen those people before. And I was thinking Jeff was one of those. Like, some people are gifted like that. They can break it because they don't do it the same way the developers do. And I don't want to
You're right.
pull this out of the podcast section. So yeah, we'll dive into that and we'll talk about that as well. The magic people that are out there. Hello and welcome back. We are diving into yet another episode of our podcast. It is Building Better Developers. It is Developreneur. It's Developreneur. It became Better Developers because the lady in the box, also known as Alexa, does not recognize Developreneur very well if you say, hey, play the next episode of that. However, if you do say, play the next episode of Building Better Developers, she will pop right up. If I were to say that right now, she might even be so sensitive that she would fire that off wherever your room is. So just so you know. That being said, my name is Rob Broadhead. I am a founder of Developreneur, also a founder of RB Consulting. And we've just been cruising through however many we're up to now, 700 plus episodes. On the other side of the digital divide is my friend Michael. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Malash. I'm another co-founder of Developreneur, and I'm also a founder of Envision QA.
This episode, I don't want to have you hanging on too long. This episode, we're going to talk about panic, basically. This is it's really not an uncommon thing, probably unfortunately, but it's something that's very workable. It's something you can work with, that you can handle and make the panic not be a horrible thing. And this panic is when you are delivering software, usually. Now, obviously, if it's 100%, like we've tested it, this should be bulletproof, and somebody breaks it and panic ensues. Okay, it's probably a little bit more panic because that means you didn't you didn't QA right, or they're doing something completely different that is new, and it should not be new at this point. We'll talk about that a little bit. But if it's a beta or something like that, there are these people, and sort of precede it with this, is there some people that are just gifted at breaking stuff. You can test it as thoroughly as you think you can. You put your software out there. 2 minutes later, they give you an email back and say, hey, I can't make this work. This is just broken. And I've run across several people like this. Usually QA people that's like where they end up because that's their gift. That's what they do best. But sometimes it's going to be your manager. It could be a CEO. It could be whoever it is. And it's usually somebody you don't want it to be because you just gave them something that should work. And they basically responded right away. It doesn't. And the panic is usually when you send it out. They should be, maybe testing like it's a beta product. They should be testing it. And it's a non-starter for them. They have hit a roadblock. It is something where they cannot move forward. And I mentioned this because I had this just the other day with a customer who is it's not like this is somebody that is not technically knowledgeable. I mean, they're not a developer, but they understand the software process. They understand how these things go. So I'm like, hey, you can have an alpha version of it, start banging around a little bit. Right away, he gets to a showstopper. A little bit of and I didn't, I'm in a call with him and he's like, yeah, I couldn't get this to work. And so there is a little bit of that panic because it's like, now, okay, he was like, this isn't going to work at all. There's no way we're like, I can't imagine that you're anywhere close to the end of this thing being done. None of it works. None of it looks right. All this kind of stuff. And all of that was, and even he during this was saying, I know we haven't really like focused on the design. I know we haven't really focused. I know there's bugs and things like that. But because he's blocked, he's panicked because he's like, all right, now this doesn't work at all. It goes from, in his mind, it goes from we're 95% there or 90% there or something like that to we're not anywhere close. Those are the kinds of things where panic sets in. And if you are, especially if you're a consultant, you're working with a customer, or if your employee and your manager is hitting this situation, panic can ensue on your end because now you're like, oh crap, I got to fix this like right away. Now, two things. One, don't panic. Say, take a step back, take a deep breath. First thing you want to do is get the situation that they went into to break it. Because sometimes it's as simple as, oh, I didn't get your user ID set up with the right permission, or, oh, you can't set that value because this other thing's going on. Or, oh, by the way, yeah, you did that, but that should never happen because we discussed it because it's in the requirements. It doesn't happen that way. We have it allowed because you're an admin, or something like that. And sometimes it is a bug. Sometimes it's like, oh, yeah, that's right. You don't see that, or that value is not there. And it's this matter of, in my testing and my development mindset, I missed it. I didn't think about somebody entering that value at that point, or I didn't realize that you could enter that value. Take that into advisement, say, okay, cool, take a note. I will fix that. I will handle that. And then do so because they found it. You want to be, you do want to prioritize that a little bit, is make sure that that gets addressed, particularly before you cut them loose on the application again. If it's something you can fix right there, maybe, but be careful about rabbit holes, because I have been in more, especially like if you're demoing something and you're on a demo and it breaks right there because somebody says, hey, can you try this? And you're like, oh, sure, I can try that because this works great. And then it blows up. One, don't ever say, yes, I can try that. Because like, if you haven't gone through if you're not sticking to your script in a demo, you're going to have problems. This, trust me, I don't care how good you think the software is. There is a magic about people saying, hey, can you enter this value? Can you do this real quick in a demo? And it breaks everything. And if you try to fix it, inevitably you're going to break everything. So now you can't even get back to the working state that you had right before you got into the demo. So don't panic. You know what level of trustworthiness your software is at. If it's crap, okay, it's like, yeah, I know it's full of bugs. It's like, here's this, we have one happy path, and if you vary from it, it will break. Okay, just make sure you're clear to that. But if it's something where it's like, hey, we're mostly there, but we still have bugs, understand that, okay, this person, it's basically, thank you, you just found a bug. I'll knock that out, put it on my list, and move on. If they're panicking, feel free to, like, especially if they go from, we think this is almost there, to this is not even close, and we're going to bail, we're going to bail out on the project. I guess it'd be the worst possible thing. It's like, okay, we're done. We're not even going to talk to you anymore. Take a deep breath, say, hey, let me show you where this does work. Let me walk you through it instead of you walking through it, because obviously they found some broken stuff. Say, hey, let me just alleviate some fears. I'm going to walk you through this and show you that it does work. And that will help alleviate those fears and help people from panicking and overreacting. Now, that's just it in a nutshell. I want to throw it over to Michael, because he's been like snickering along the way as well, and see what your thoughts are in these kinds of situations. Because I also know you have experienced more than a couple of them.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Yeah, uh, plenty of situations like that. Um, One particularly came to mind, and we briefly touched on it before we kicked off the podcast, was we were actually worked together at a place where no matter what we did, we could try to test our code. The moment we said the code was ready, our boss would go out and within minutes, oh, I found a bug. And it's like, what did you do? So there was always that constant anxiety to hit that button to say the code is done, it's committed, and things are good, which actually led me down a interesting path of my career over that, because prior to that in college, I went through a lot of classes that actually pushed test-driven development. And early on, a lot of companies and a lot of developers don't follow that model, because really a lot of people think, well, if I write my code, the code performs, there's my test, the code works. And in a way, sure, but we still need to write our unit tests. We still need to have some type of QA around our applications. However, if you go into the mindset of a requirement or an application that you're putting out with testing first, in fact, I actually did that this week. I had a ticket come across that was fairly well documented with the requirements, but there was kind of a few missing pieces. So I had to go back, ask some more questions, kind of refine the requirements first. But then I literally started with a main method and started stepping through, okay, what is the final output? What is this supposed to generate? So I created my Pojo to generate the DTO to generate the output from the API call. So I had a little hard coded JSON script that kicked back out into this call and produced a DTO. And then I slowly walked through all the steps. So by the time I was done, I literally had 15 methods. Each method was a specific requirement point. It did a specific task, easily to test. And when I was done, testing was mute. All I had to do is literally write 15 unit tests to test my methods, done, and then write a couple integration tests to test the software. Now, in Rob's situation where he was talking about this, I've run into a lot of situations, especially with new clients or even prospect clients, where it's like, hey, I have this problem. I need this application, or I'm looking to have this done. So what you do is you go and you mock something up. You throw something together that's, on rubber bands, shoestrings, and duct tape to just kind of present what it will do. The problem is, especially in enterprise, if you show it to the wrong person, they think, oh, this is great. It's going to production tomorrow. And you're like, oh, no, no. And then you end up in these weird coding situations where you're struggling 40, 100, 200 hours trying to get something out the door that the bigwig thinks was ready yesterday and it's not. So they kind of a flip to where they went from high level of, hey, we're ready to go to, no confidence in the project. In this situation, you went from, hey, even though this doesn't look, isn't fully functional, you demoed something that looked functional enough and they're already going to production. So now you're struggling to fill those holes and gaps to avoid the downfall that could be coming.
And the testing is a good point on that, because that is one of the things you can do to help, to make lemonade out of the lemons of a situation like this, is to talk to them about, how did you generate this issue? How did this come about? Particularly if you're further into your software development lifecycle, where this should be a fairly mature product. And I've run into this as well, where I've got another customer that it's a fairly mature product, but it's amazing, and he's in the QA world. He's very good at breaking stuff, and he's got a couple of employees that are very good at, like, they always do stuff different, or different enough that it breaks the system. And so what you do is you find out what they did. If you can, these days you can maybe have them recorded or something like that. It's just like, figure out those steps and then build that into your tests. So for example, this application I just talked about, one of the things we do is we've got basically a Selenium based robot that runs through the whole site and does a whole bunch of stuff to go check different things out, look at variables, make sure things are working right. It's like a smoke test, maybe a little deeper than that, but it's just really, so when we go deploy something, kick this thing off, hit all these different pages, look at all the results, let's make sure everything's working still. And then if we've got, like, over time, as they've said, oh, hey, we did this and this broke, then we just add that in. So now we test and we'll go look at that specific thing and say, okay, I'm going to do this action and it better come back correctly. Something I learned back in college with some of these kinds of things, the special stuff, is we had a guy, and I will never forget his last name. His last name was Eigenschenk. And the way it was spelled actually broke everybody's sort. We had something that you're supposed to go in and you're sorting a name or a string based by just alphabetical order. And the pattern that we went through, the sort that we did, and I can't remember which one it was, but it assumed a certain thing. It assumed a certain order of letters. We didn't realize that until we actually hit it and realized that it was like an I before E instead of E before I, or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but it was something to that level, that only certain words, and his name happened to be one of those words, would break it. And the test was, you put your name into it. And this guy was, like, the smartest guy in the class. And he would run through and he could not get this thing to work. And finally, like, dragged the rest of us in. We all figured it out and went through it. But it was because everybody else's worked, because their name didn't have that little magic problem. And that's so often what happens with an application, is that they take one step different, or they set one value different. And that's the one that the combination of things then breaks it. And it's a matter of find out what that step is, reproduce it, and then you should be able to figure out why is it that their specific series of steps they took caused a break when yours did not. And so it is again, something that it can be, yes, sort of uncomfortable at the moment, because people are like, this isn't working at all. And you're sort of stuck trying to figure out how to fix it. But if you step back and say, okay, it's a bug, software has that, let's just go with that. I'm going to go figure out what it did, fix it. And then you can show them the next time around. And it helps build confidence to say, hey, This is what you did. We didn't catch this. And maybe you can show three other flavors of that process or that approach that would have broken it. But it's like, hey, look, we can catch this and this and this and this, and build that confidence back up. And that's sometimes the best thing is to say it's not just that, yeah, because I think some people expect you to have 100% perfect software out of the gates. It's not going to happen. But a lot of people realize there's going to be some bugs and things like that. There's going to be issues. There's going to be changes. If you can respond quickly and in a logical manner and say, hey, here's what was going on, here's what we changed, this is how it's been improved, then a lot of times that is going to be the big win coming out of it. Final thoughts on that before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, one additional thing, especially with what you kind of experienced to kind of point out, when you're working on code or tickets or requirements, some things to think about as you're before you even pick up the ticket or start the work. One, do you have enough requirements? Do you have enough defined to work the problem? For instance, if it's user inputs, do you have the min max? Is it alphanumeric? Is it alpha only? Can it take special characters? Common sense questions that you kind of want to define before you start writing because that will impact the user experience. One other thing to think about is not just from the user side, but also what are the basically the user acceptance criteria. What if I complete this ticket, how do I test it? What is acceptable for completion? What is the minimum level of completion? And then lastly, make sure you add enough debuggers or comments in your code so that if an exception or a problem does occur, it gets logged properly. So you're not having to dig through the code to figure out where the heck something went wrong.
That is actually where a lot of times I've found that is that I found that, customer has a problem. I can't track it down. And so we add some logging around that. Like maybe it's a process that we thought wasn't going to fail, or code that we're like, oh, that's going to work every time. Oh, wait, no, it doesn't, because they just broke somewhere in there. So sometimes that's where you add exception handling, logging, things like that. Anything that you can use to help you with debugging it is always going to be helpful as well, because it's just like down the road, you can say, okay, we know that this section of code at least is logging the things that it needs to for us to be able to debug it outside of actually doing that action, outside of like being on the server. And of course, depending on your application, sometimes that's easier said than done. Sometimes you can get more information out of your server, sometimes you can't. All of that, it's take that on a case by case basis. That being said, we're going to take this minute by minute on a case by case basis. And the case right now is to wrap this sucker up. So we are going to come back. We're not done yet with our season. We're going to continue to talk through some of the challenges and the experiences that we have each week, some of the technology that we're running into. If you have any questions, comments, or anything like that, or suggestions, recommendations, shoot us an email at info@developreneur.com. Check us out on developreneur.com. You've got a comment page, a contact us. You can check us out on our YouTube channel. You can check us out at Developreneur on Twitter/X. You name it, we're out there somewhere. And if not, let us know and we'll go get out there so you can contact us there. You just got to contact us on a different thing, chicken and egg problem. That being said, go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. The rest of you, we're going to continue to talk to you as we wrap this one up and then cut into figure out what we're going to do with our next episode around. Any extra bonus thoughts on that?
Actually, yeah. So as you were wrapping up, it just dawned on me. We didn't talk about tools. So as you're running into these problems or you're working on software, look at using tools like SonarLint, SonarQube, code debuggers. These are very useful tools to help you identify areas of risk within your code, potential dependency issues, or even risk for like SQL injections, things of that nature. The other thing to think of is to also maybe do like an OWASP vulnerability check to see if there's any dependencies that your software might be using that also potentially could have bugs. Because if you use third-party plugins, the bug may not be you, it might be someone else, and then you've got to go down a whole different rabbit hole to fix your code.
Yeah, I would add on. Yeah, I think If you don't use static code analysis tools, then it's very good to add. It's built in. There's actually a lot of them built into most of the modern IDEs. But go if you're not really comfortable about it, if you don't know if they're being used, go just pick your favorite search engine. Do static code analysis tools for whatever your language is. Java, Python, .NET, whatever, and you will find some. A lot of them are going to be the same that you're going to see. It's going to be the same name, sort of like you have like log for J, log for N, all those. It's one of those you're going to see it for whatever your language is. And then once you can get an idea of what is out there, then it'll be very helpful. There's also there's things you can attach into your GitHub your Git repositories and do some stuff there. You can build it into your if you have like your DevOps structure, some of those things you can use testing, you can do static code analysis as well. It is at least at the same level, I think, as particularly unit tests and things like that. I've actually found it's probably more useful. And it's actually useful to better understand the language. I don't know how many times that I've run a static analysis thing across a language that I've been using, sometimes even for a while. And it will bring up some stuff and say, hey, you should try this, or you should do that, or this isn't used anymore, or this is going to be deprecated. And maybe you have a language that you don't realize that's going to be deprecated, or you don't realize there's a better, newer way to handle that process. And like Michael implied, it's going to give you a lot of times insight of things like, hey, if you do this, you could be susceptible to some sort of an attack. Or if you do this, you're probably going to have some logic issue. It's things like that you usually will not catch in a compile, we'll put it in quotes, a compile run, but you will catch once you start shoving data through there. And it's really helpful for interpreted languages like a Python or something like that. And even PHP, I found that there's a lot of times those things will catch stuff before you get it in actually out in a live environment. And it just speeds up the test fix cycle. That being said, looks like you got one more thing to say. So I'm going to let you say one more thing.
Yeah, in addition to all of that, look at the tools that you're using. A lot of the front end applications or frameworks now have user input functionality. So, like, if you have an input field, you can add, oh, this is alphanumeric. Oh, it's min max characters. So, if you're doing anything, especially front end or user facing, make sure that you are looking at those inputs and applying the correct configuration to those components as you're putting them out there. It'll make your life so much easier if you do it right as you're doing it versus trying to do it on the back end.
Agreed. It's just again, it's always one of those. The sooner you catch stuff and address it, the less it's going to cost you in recoding it and making those changes. So we will wrap this one up, and we will talk to you guys next time around. Leave comments, notes, all that kind of good stuff. We will have show notes probably for some of this. I think we'll try to get some of the links in the show notes for a couple of the static analysis tools just to help you out. And we will be back next time around.